The next panel discussion, which is about the social dimension of the European integration and what it means in Central Europe and what it means in the Hungarian context. As speakers yesterday already highlighted, behind us is a very productive period, also in response to the coronavirus crisis. But ever since the adoption of the European Pillar of Social Rights, we believe that a number of great new initiatives came up in the European Union. And thanks also to the outgoing Social Affairs Commissioner, Nicola Schmid. This has been the time when, in an alliance with the Socialists and Democrats, with the Trade Union Confederation, with civil society, the European Union managed to deliver a lot in order to promote and develop further the EU social dimension. Policies to support social inclusion in the countries and also strengthen cohesion in face of the adversity at the time of great crisis. But at this time, we are really concerned, and I think there are many, many question marks on the table what concerns the establishment of the new Commission and the development of the new agenda. So that's why I will ask the members of the next panel to assess the years behind us, but also to look forward, to identify what can be the content of a new social agenda. What is the new horizon for developing the social Europe? And first of all, I would like to ask again Gabriele Bischoff, Vice President of the S&D Group in the European Parliament, an MEP from Germany, to come on stage. She will be accompanied by Gábor Harangozó, who is a former MEP and a program director of the Institute for Social Democracy in Hungary, András Bíró-Nagy, who is the director of Policy Solution, another FEPS member foundation, and Gergely Arató, who is a member of the Hungarian Parliament and the former State Secretary for Education in Hungary. And I welcome you all. It's, I think, a great team again. And without further ado, let's organize the panel in a way that all four panelists would be invited to make an initial statement, either from here or from their seats. It's up to them. And they can also choose the language. It can be either English or Hungarian, not German, Gaby, or others, because we have others. But I think you are comfortable with either English or Hungarian. You can choose, and then we will be as interactive as possible between the four panelists, but also we will leave time for the audience to ask questions. So I will not need this. But please make yourself comfortable, and the first speaker is Gaby Bischoff.
Thank you very much, and I will make it very short about the view back, and we'll talk more about the next 5 years ahead. And if we view back, we will see that the last 5 years will be going down in European history as some golden years for social policy, because we achieved a lot in the last 5 years, a lot of things also where, to be very honest, if someone would have asked me 2016 when I was in Göteborg, if we would have a minimum wage directive happening, I would have said, I don't believe in that. I hope for it, but I'm quite skeptical. We did that, but we didn't stop there. We have European regulation on platform work. And their two-step approach, on one hand, regulating algorithms in the world of work on platform is a major step ahead. And also tackling bogus self-employment in this area. And the opposition to this regulation was huge. It was massive, and nevertheless we managed to do it. We got something that was not even in the program and the mission letter of Nicolas Schmidt, a revision of the European Works Council directive that we will continue in this term. We will now start to take up the negotiations. We did on equal pay, men and women, and I could continue for some time, but I just wanted to highlight really some of the successes that we did with the pro-European democratic and social majority. But, and we just had a panel with the just transition, the challenges are enormous. And this is why I would like to present to you 5 priorities that we have as the S&D group in the European Parliament we want to achieve and work on in the next 5 years. And for us, a directive on just transition in the world of work, and here especially through anticipation and management of change, will be essential. And we want to base this on the principle of trade union involvement, of collective bargaining, and also of strengthening democracy at work, so having the workers included to shape this change and not being just a victim or an object of change. And this also includes a right to training of all workers. And this is essential because we don't limit our approach on the debate on skills like von der Leyen is doing it, the Conservatives are doing it, but really a right to training, and here a good training that enables people really to have better opportunities in the labor market. For us, the second priority really is combating the risks for workers in the digital age. Because, yes, we regulated it on platform work, but we really need also a directive on AI in the workplace. We included on telework, and also we started this work already on the right to disconnect, so that we reduced the risks, especially also we have a rise of psychosocial risks in the digital age that we need to address. We have another priority, and this has a lot to do with the experiences of the last years, that we want to regulate labor market intermediaries and subcontracting. And this goes along with a recast and a change of the public procurement directive. We have to make sure that social conditionalities and especially also that you have that you really have also collective bargaining, because the money, the European money we spend on public procurement is huge. And up to now, the quality of work is not really a clear criteria, and especially this will be represented by making collective bargaining also a stronger precondition to do this money. We did an exchange of experiences, good examples we have from Denmark, for example, from certain localities, and we really want to push for this in the next period. And already in the mission letter, the reform of the public procurement directive is a key element. Our fourth priority is really a fair mobility. This is why we want, and we already started the work, the Parliament, cross-party, has a strong position to reform the European Labour Agency. We have to give them competences also to address the growing number of third country nationals working in the European labour market. They are excluded at the moment. The European Labour Agency cannot deal with this question. We will strengthen that. And also, I know I'm the rapporteur of this, the coordination of social security systems is essential. If we want to have more mobility, we have to make sure that the rights and entitlements workers have in the European labour market are as mobile as other things, and they don't lose entitlements. And also we want to support networks that advise workers on their labour market, on the rights they have in terms of third country nationals working in Europe, but also mobile workers from other European countries. We have, and that is the last priority I will present, and I know I have to be short, I talked about this yesterday. One of our key priorities is a European housing strategy and a European anti-poverty strategy. And here, and I think as much as in the just transition, it's not enough that we talk about the goals we have, but we have to deliver concrete strategies how to address it. And this is what we will focus on in the next 5 years as the S&D progressive groups. Deliver for citizens, deliver for our workers with concrete policies, not just promises. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gaby, for outlining a very, very concrete agenda. I suggest we follow the seating order for the interventions. I would like to ask Gergely to come next.
Well, generally speaking, the problem of the cost of the living is generally shape the political situation in Europe. The question is not the people are suffering. The question is who is responsible. And I think so we could be effective if we could answer for this question in a really straight way. So I think it's one of our main goals should be not to forget the socio-economical background of the current problem. Not to pretend the capitalism is working well. If we do not do it, we cannot find the solid base to develop our policies in that areas. And on the other hand, one of our main goals is to protect the most vulnerable people. Let me highlight one topic. The energy poverty is one of the most crucial issues in Hungary, and I think so in many parts of the Europe. For example, in Hungary, people who are the poorer are using wood for coal for heating. I know this is very problematic in the ecological point of view too. But that means they getting the less support from the state for their heating, and they have no money for change the heating system. So this is why we're speaking about, for example, Democratic Coalition, about the support of the transition, not on the global level, but in the question of the most vulnerable and poorer people in the country. And this is why, for example, one of our main goals is the make a strong program for the changing of the energy system of the households, the block houses, or in the small houses built in the 80s, which are the very problematic in the point of view of the energy using. So I think we should think generally in the general issues, but to find the clever policies which are directly targeting the vulnerable groups of the society.
Thank you very much. Gábor, you're next.
Thank you, Gergely. So first of all, based on yesterday's experiences, when I could realize that most of the audience is Hungarian, let me apologize, but I will talk now Hungarian. So please, if you need a translation, take your tools.
By way of introduction, let me say a couple of words about why I think that this is the most important issue. Why is the question of social Europe so important? What we see is that in the past years, people have turned away from politics, and basically It is the far right that can reach out for the majority of the people. Why? Especially against the background of European politics, what are the root causes for that? We, let's put it, have started to build up a fantastic utopia. The common states of Europe was the goal of providing welfare for European people. We have a common economic policy, we introduced a common currency, and we harmonized the economic cooperation. But somewhere, the fate of everyday people got lost on this way. While we had managed to create the economic union, we failed with the social union, and people do not have the feeling that everything is about them and for them. So if we want to tackle this situation, in my view, the most important thing is to emphasize in our policies everyday people to a much greater extent. If we try to see the cause for success of populist policies is that they can make people believe that we socialists and we on the left stand up for minorities, while it is it is their group and family that stand up for all people's interests, like Viktor Orbán. That's why they're so different. If people will follow us when they realize that our policies focus on everyday people and on the better living of people, it's about pensions, pays and wages, public services. If we manage to be much more efficient in that area, we will be able to have people follow us. Thank you. That's by means of introduction.
Köszönjük szépen, és akkor András.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, and András.
The invitation, I think that it's absolutely vital to speak about social issues within the framework of such a conference, and especially in Hungary, because what I think it's absolutely clear is that this is the issue, or these are the issues that matter most to the Hungarians. And, by the way, these are the issues which I consider as the weakest points of Viktor Orbán's regime in Hungary. So it's not only the right thing to do to talk about social issues and act in this territory based on the values that are considered to be the right values of social democracy, but also because politically this is what can potentially work against the Orbán regime. The reason why I'm saying this is because we have been regularly doing polls at our think tank Policy Solutions about what are the top concerns of Hungarians. And for 3 years now, what we measure is that high prices and low salaries are clearly the top issues, the top concerns of the Hungarian population. And after these two items, number 3 is the state of healthcare, which also shows that there is significant room of maneuver for progressive policies on public services as well. And the reason why I'm arguing that the social performance of the Orbán regime is probably the weakest link, probably the weakest point of this regime is maybe can be underlined by a shocking news from this year. This has rocked Hungarian public opinion when it turned out that for the first time ever, the average salary in Romania surpassed the average salary in Hungary. I don't think that any further substantiation is needed to back up this argument. Hungary is now one of the poorest countries in the European Union after 20 years of EU membership, and the social mobility has not been worse than nowadays, although the starting point was not very good either 20 years ago in this respect. So I would summarize it that in terms of wages, in terms of public services, in terms of housing, and in terms of energy prices, there are plenty of areas where social democracy can be very active and offer an alternative, a credible alternative to the current regime. My other point would be that at the European level, I see some worrying signs for this term. despite the very ambitious agenda that we have heard from Gaby Bischoff, and I agree that these are all vital items. But the worrying sign is the overall direction of the Commission that is starting to take place. Von der Leyen has come for the second time with a plan without a direct reference to social rights for the titles of the upcoming commissioners. That's already a very worrying sign, because you can see that probably social issues, probably social affairs are considered as of secondary importance by the current European Commission. And this is why I think the S&D group in the European Parliament has a very important role in pushing for as concrete commitments as possible during the commissioner hearings in a few weeks' time, and also in the coming years, because what we can also see in the mission letters given to the European commissioners, but it's true that they are digged in a very deep part of the mission letter to the person responsible for people, skills and preparedness. This is how they call it this time. So there is no employment, no jobs, no social affairs. There are people and skills and preparedness. But what is buried deep down there is exactly the European Affordable Housing Plan. So there is a direct reference to that. There is a reference to the anti-poverty strategy. And there is also a commitment to a new action plan on the implementation of the European Pillar of Social Rights. These are some issues that I think that the S&D group should pretty much push for, and as I said, as concrete commitments as possible on these topics in the upcoming weeks and months. Thank you.
Thank you, András. I think it's excellent that you mentioned the portfolio allocation issue, and with this you threw back the hot potato immediately to Gaby. So Gaby, would you like to respond to this?
Yes, I mean, it was the same when we saw the title. The first thing is that we discussed, okay, preparedness. What the hell do they mean in terms of social policy? But I have to say we had the same and a similar thing before Nicolas Schmidt was appointed. Also there in the mission letter, they were not talking about social rights at all. And also jobs. So I'm quite convinced that we will change the title again, but it's not only the title, it's the content connected to it. This is why indeed Roxana Minsantu comes from our political family. We had exchanges in our social democratic working group with her to make sure that we not only change the title, but that we get as many concrete commitments as possible here to address these social challenges, because that will be essential, and this is why the hearings are so important. And I am Vice President responsible for preparing the hearings on the employment and social field, economy, and also common market. So we will make sure really that our questions will target this and aim to get more concrete commitments there.
Thank you. I think we should still look at another aspect of the portfolio allocation, which is very important for Hungary, which is the question of health. Because now, as you know, the Hungarian commissioner is designated for the health portfolio, at least for the hearing. And it was also mentioned now that we have the pandemic experience behind us. And at the time of the pandemic, also the S&D group was advocating the so-called health union. FEPS also published a book, thanks to the collaboration of the former Lithuanian Commissioner Andriukaitis, to promote the idea of a closer EU cooperation on healthcare policies, and especially from a Central European perspective, there is a strong case for this advocacy. How do you see the possibilities somehow to connect or even integrate healthcare into the social domain and promote it in the next cycle? Who would like to comment on this? Gábor?
Köszönöm.
Well, Market is very important and we have to respect the market, but at the same time there are certain topics that cannot be managed by market. For example, it is not possible to control hospitals based on market-based. Healthcare institutions cannot be part of the market because the access to healthcare system should be a fundamental right of everyone. This is fair, but not only fair, but also economically, this is well-based solutions because employees can only be competitive if their health is guaranteed. And if healthcare access depends on financial opportunities of specific people, then we will get to a situation what we have today in Hungary. Just the poorest people have access to very poor public healthcare. But if there is a real healthcare problem of a person, then he or she will have to pay in order to receive good healthcare. In public sphere in Hungary, publicly, the public financed healthcare system is not providing relevant health care. So this is, I think, a fundamental task of the socialists to fight for having a free, high-quality healthcare system. If we look around in Scandinavian countries, then we will see that on a very high level, with minimum payment obligations, all citizens have an access to high-quality healthcare system, and the same is true for education in northern countries.
Of the common national health services is a very problematic phenomenon, and it's happening not only in Hungary. I absolutely agree with Gábor. It's very problematic in Hungary, but if I see well, it's happening in many countries in different ways. So I think the more important question is not what we want. I think we will agree. We want an integrated European health system. We want to defend the national health system and want to defend the structure of the equal right to the health. And both in this issue or in the social issues, I think the main political issue is what political tools we have. We've got the S&D group in the parliament, good. It sometimes could be very effective, but what else? Do we have integrated policies in health, in social issues, in employment, which is represented not by the S&D group, but the national parties too, and more importantly, which is implemented and supported in the European level by the social democratic lead governments, which has the possibility to really make changes in the council. So I think we could find strong policies and have to unite for these policies in national and the European levels too.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we all agree that there is a need to push for more European Health Union in the next term as well, but improving healthcare, especially in this part of Europe, and not only talking about Hungary, but in Central and Eastern Europe in general, it's not only about minimum standards in healthcare, it's also about improving the infrastructure and also investment in human capital, increasing salaries in the health sector, and not only the health sector, this could be said also for the education system. And as the communication of the Hungarian government has shown, there is increasingly a link in the Hungarian government's politics between EU funds and the potential improvement of public services in Hungary. There was an argument in Hungary by the Prime Minister that they cannot raise the salaries of teachers because nasty Brussels is not giving the money to the Hungarian government. So they were blaming actually the lack of improvement in public services on the European Union. Very dangerous phenomenon, by the way, because this is how you can really undermine support for EU membership in Hungary. But there is some truth in this, in that Hungary has proved in the last 2 years, I think, that it's possible to survive without EU funds, but it's not possible to develop the country without EU funds. And it's certainly true for the healthcare system. So I think that in order to improve the infrastructure, increase the salaries in the system, Hungary should have an access to the EU funds. And for this reason, I think it's absolutely worrying that the Hungarian government has not been showing any kind of willingness towards meeting the so-called super milestones that would be needed not only to reach the cohesion funds, but also a much bigger proportion of money, which is suspended now under the umbrella of the recovery fund. It's 10 billion euros, and I think that in the Hungarian public opinion, it hasn't been handled with enough importance that there is a significant risk of permanently losing these funds. Currently, we are only talking about freezing the funds and suspension of the funds. But if Hungary cannot live with this opportunity to, for example, develop healthcare, to, for example, develop digital skills in Hungary and education and so on, with the help of the recovery fund in the next 2 years, the risk is quite real that we might lose these funds forever.
We are back to Gaby.
Yes, and I think that's a very important point, because it is money that will not be here because of the responsibility of Orbán to do the right things and also to explain what could and should be done with this money. But I wanted to come back to your question. At the moment, we are not only negotiating a mandate on a housing committee, but we have a subcommittee on health, and we are changing this into a full committee. I mean, we have limited competences in the area of health at the moment, but we can do much more, and this is what we want to do in the next period here. But I also wanted to highlight one of the points we can exploit what we achieved in the last term in regarding economic governance. Because we negotiated, and the S&D group was the driver for this. Also, I had the honor to be the rapporteur. We negotiated with the Council within the economic framework for the first time that the European pillar of social rights is anchored right in the economic policy. I mean, we will know, I referred, we have not much competences, but what we can see that with the deficits in many member states, very big areas for reform will be pensions and the health sector, because in national budgets it often is really very big. So, and we established a new instrument that we call, it sounds maybe technical, but in reality it's very political, a social convergence framework. So to get the money, member states have to do their reform plans, and the Commission will assess if these reform plans help to achieve the goals of the pillar, also regarding social policy health, or if they damage them, and there will be a sort of traffic light system. So it flags red if the reform plans of the member states are diminishing social rights or have detrimental effects in the health sector, and then they have to go back and discuss with the Commission to address this. So this could also help for the next 5 years when we look at the national reforms via European instruments to make sure that the goals all member states, all social partners, everyone agreed to regarding the pillar of social rights here will be also met in the national reforms.
Mm-hmm. I think you're interactive. I will have a few questions, so please respond briefly because there are a few other topics I would like to touch upon.
Okay, do not collaborate with the European institutions because he believes he will get the money from EU if he does not complain to the super milestones. And I think it's very important. He thinks the things are changing in Brussels. The right and the far right became more powerful, and the left beginning to weakening. And he thinks it's make him a much better position. I mention it because it's connected with the question of the designated Hungarian commissioner. If Mr. Várhelyi could go through to the hearing when he's absolutely unqualified for this job in many point of view, that will be a strong signal to Orbán, yes, do it. Yes, there are no real opposition against you in the European level. So I think our group should think wisely about how it makes moves in that issue, because it's a much important issue as a usual hearing of designated commissioner.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to reflect what András said. It's true that most of the EU subsidies are suspended, but we had many EU subsidies coming to the healthcare system before, but most of them were private investments. Mm-hmm. And those private investments need capital return. And why we are financing from community monies this private investments, we are just boosting the inequalities, because they need the capital return, they need more income, and this increase the cost of the people if they would like to have healthcare services. So I would never give private investment in healthcare, only public.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Let me drive the discussion to a slightly different direction. In fact, back to the origin, because the origin of Call to Europe in Budapest is the Hungarian presidency of the Council. And in 2011, there was already a Hungarian presidency of the Council, when one of the very proud achievements of the period was a Roma integration strategy, which I think from a Central European point of view was a very important question, because the Roma people, many of them are marginalized. There's a strong correlation between poverty and social exclusion and the Roma minority. And somehow this is not brought back. Somehow, you know, after many discussions in Brussels and elsewhere, this issue somehow subsided. And not even the current Hungarian presidency is raising it again. Does it mean that the problem is solved? Does it mean that it's not important anymore? Well, how would you comment on that? Who would like to start?
Okay, then I can start it.
You have a mic.
So I think this is mainly the problem of vulnerability. So it's not just we don't need special measures helping to Roma minorities, but we have to fight against the vulnerable communities. In Hungary, most of the vulnerable communities are rural-based communities, in small settlements. And most of the poorest Roma people are living in those small settlements. And if you look at the EU cohesion policy. We spend a lot of money, but we spend this money to help boost the developing centers the best, because we need knowledge to figure out projects. We need co-financing, and what is missing in the most vulnerable communities is the knowledge to figure out the projects. There is no co-financing, and the differences are just boosting when we spending the EU monies. If you look at the past 20 years of Hungary, the most vulnerable communities could develop a small. We have nice churches repainted. We have nice, I don't know, roads to rebuild. But there is no real change in the economic life of these most vulnerable communities. So first we have to change our policies to help more efficiently those communities, and then we will help also the Roma people, who most of them are living in these areas.
So better targeted developmental strategy to the least developed parts of our country and elsewhere in Europe. András, something to add?
Yeah, I think the lack of the Roma people's agenda in general, not only in the agenda of the Hungarian presidency, but also on the agenda of the Hungarian government in general, is the clear sign and the clear illustration of how the situation got much worse since 2011, when Hungary was holding the previous presidency. Since then, in Hungary, there is no minister for social affairs. In Hungary, there is no minister for education. There is no minister for healthcare, by the way. The Hungarian government tends to handle all these issues under the umbrella of so-called human resources. And this phenomenon, which László Andor has described as social divergence from the European trends, is reflected, I think, in the fact that 13 years after Hungary's previous presidency, the Hungarian government is not even bothering putting symbolically some social issues on the agenda, but the full focus is on competitiveness, of course. So the big achievement of this Hungarian presidency, if everything goes according to the plan of the Hungarian government, will be a major pact on competitiveness in 10 days' time here in Budapest. So pretty soon after the American elections, there will be a major summit here in Budapest, and this is what the Hungarian government would like to present as the biggest achievement. So there is absolutely zero emphasis on the social pillar of the European Union, and 100% of emphasis on the economic dimension.
You are reading my mind, because that would have been my next question, but let me formulate it in my own way while the audience is preparing questions. So this is my next provocative question to the panel, and we will open up. Please prepare brief, concrete questions to the panel. But indeed the question is whether there is a trade-off between competitiveness and the social agenda. Because if you look at the narrative of the Hungarian presidency of this season, then they will tell you that we are either competitive or we deal with the social issues, and for them competitiveness is, low tax, flat tax, benefits to the multinational companies, and so on and so forth. And this is I think this is a genuine question, and since Gaby spoke about the coordination of economic and social policies before, maybe Gaby would be happy to start this round.
Yeah, I mean, Europe has to realize that it has to discuss its concept of competitiveness. And there are very many different concepts in Europe. A good welfare state, I spoke yesterday of functioning institutions, are very essential elements also of competitiveness. But I wanted also to come back on the Roma strategy. And I have to say, in the employment committee, we did a lot of missions also in the last times, and came back really, really shocked, because also thinking, where does the money go? Why is it not working? We have to discuss this. Because otherwise we are doing wonderful programs, but they will not work. So we have to change it. And another aspect, I met a European organization of Roma artists, and they said to me, and I think they're right, you are always addressing the issue from a deficit perspective. Maybe also we as Roma Europeans, we represent a future model, mobile people that know different languages, that are at home in many different European cities and not focus only on the deficiencies and the social problems, but enlarge your view here. And I took this with me because I think this is also an aspect we have to take on board. But what the battle will not be either, I mean, no one believes in trickle-down economics or anything. I mean, that's over, and we also know what the deregulation, what the consequences of huge deregulation were when we look at the financial crisis. So this is why we really have to engage in this debate and make sure that functioning welfare states, a functioning health system, a housing market that works for everyone are key elements for competitiveness in Europe.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned the EU fund. There is one person I know who knows all about the EU funds and where it's went. His name is Olaf. Gergely?
I'm very thankful to Gaby not let the Roma issue go so easy, because I think there are a responsibility in the European level too. We have to understand why the Roma strategy did not work, because the truth. I worked in that field in Brussels some years ago, and Roma NGOs had a very concrete position about that question. I want to mention three things because I think it would be useful to the other EU policies too. One, there is no real teeth. There is no real force to support the strategy. That was something the governments could go to the Brussels and speak something, and they could write reports, and there was no any consequences if they do not comply their own perspectives and goals and aims. The second, the lack of the possibility, the real local communities to make part in that Roma strategy. That you mentioned it too. It's the Roma people living in a small village or Roma intellectuals has no real possibility to make connect for this. There was many levels of the national and in the Euro level when experts did good things, but there is no real connection with the real Roma communities. And the third one is maybe the lack of the real understanding that the Roma peoples and the Roma communities are very different from each other. You mentioned the Roma artists, but they have a very different problems. When the poor Romas living in a Hungarian village, traveling people living in France, and so on. So I think I mentioned this, and yes, this is one of my favorite topics. So I should speak a lot about it. But I think it has got a general thing we should learn about that question. I think it was one of the more interesting and more brave initiative of the European Commission and the Presidency that time. But I think and if I'm speaking about it not was a real success, I don't say it because I don't want to be such a brave initiative from the Commission and from the Council. But to understand, we could do it better if you learn from the failures.
Maybe we go to the competitiveness issue, if you can follow up on this.
I would like to address what you have raised about the dangerous division between competitiveness and the social pillar of the European Union, because what I think is that social democrats should not accept this narrative at all, because there are some very concrete examples from the European Union that, that very competitive countries can hold very strong safety nets, social safety nets. They can have a comprehensive approach to healthcare, housing, and social services, and so on. In Hungary and in Central and Eastern Europe, we very regularly make a reference to the Scandinavian model, to the Scandinavian examples of welfare states. And we can see that, for example, in Finland or Sweden or Denmark, even in Germany, Austria, we can see some very competitive countries with much stronger social safety nets than in Central and Eastern Europe. So neither at the European level nor in Hungary and in Central and Eastern Europe we should accept this division.
Gábor?
Yeah, I just would like to continue what András started. So I think the social services are essential in competitiveness. Mm-hmm. So according to the neoliberal economists, they used to say that we should boost the economy first to help the economy to growth, and then we can increase the salaries and we can increase the social services, which is not true. Based on the experience of the Nordic countries' wealth system, the sense of their economic growth is to have very strong trade unions, which guarantees the highest salaries in Europe, and the best healthcare system and education system. And this is the basis of their economic growth as well, because they are not competing by giving bad salaries to the people, like in Hungary, or low public services, like in Hungary, but their employees are well paid, well educated to be competitive in all areas, and their health is okay because they have a good healthcare system, so they can be competitive, not like the Hungarians who have 2 or 3 jobs with very bad salaries and lack of real education, real knowledge, what is needed in the 21st century. And if you have some health problem in Hungary, then you have to wait sometimes years to get real help in the public service. So if you want to have a real competitive economy, then you need the social services first, and that serves the economy as well.
Thank you. Now the time has come for the audience, so if you have concrete questions, ideally brief, my colleague David is going to bring you a microphone, and then you can ask your questions to the panelists. Who would like to start? David here in front row, and then the gentleman the second. Óvatosan.
Szekeres István vagyok.
My name is István Szekeres, and I represent, I'm board member of the Hungarian Resistance and Anti-Fascist Organization. The issues were highly interesting, and I'm deeply convinced that economic growth, competitiveness is impossible without social progress, and this also threatens democracy. We can say that the right and far right ideas emerge. We do not. While we also know that they do not emerge, they're already present. So we do not talk about the future in Hungary when we talk about the consequences of all that, but we talk about something that's already present. We talk about social progress, which is indispensable, just like equal opportunities. And without social progress and equal opportunities, an anti-democratic, pro-fascist government is in power, has been in power now for more than 10 years. And statistics also underline that the disadvantaged regions, small settlements, and among people with low qualification is where they find the greatest support. And what is your question? The question is, how is it possible to link the three problems I raised here and you also talked about? So disadvantaged regions, small villages, and education. Healthcare also, because there are hundreds of settlements where there's no even a GP. And we must bring these three things together into one task. Without that, we won't have progress. Thank you very much. The next one is here.
Keszei Péter vagyok.
Péter Keszei. I would like to ask my question in Hungarian as well. Gaby, to you. In Germany, what is the healthcare in what situation is healthcare in Germany? Do you also have these waiting lists? And if yes, in what areas? And what is the average time of waiting? And also, I have a question on German rail. No. Let's keep the rails out of this discussion. That's another panel. Okay, just healthcare, please. Okay, let's skip this rail issue. And there are two more questions here, and then we'll close the round and we get the answers. Patalin Pop. I'm in the rotating president of the Consultation Council of Pensioners. There are two persons in our organization representing FERTA, which is the international organization of more than 10 million pensioners along trade union lines. Last spring, the French and the Belgian colleagues organized a great action on the World Health Day against the privatization of healthcare. So I would say that this is not only a Hungarian problem, but a European one. And you're also part of the European Health Union that was announced with Mr. Or presented with Mr. Újhelyi and Mr. Kökény in the Hungarian EU Center. What chances do we have as European citizens? Because we consider ourselves to be European citizens, by the way, only now perhaps. But what chances are there that we are going to be eligible to social services in other countries, or the same type of services like any other countries offer to their citizens in Europe? And when I asked that in the FERPA organization, my Dutch colleagues asked me, what's your problem? They have resolved the social and the health problems there. So what I ask is the uniform goal. I don't know if I can have benefits of such kind of a unified healthcare in my lifetime, but it would be very good.
As the panelists.
Szentpéteri Györgyi vagyok, az első magyar feltétel nélküli alapjövedelem.
I am president of an association which fights for equal unconditional basic wage. This is an organization fighting against poverty. We have a very close relationship to several Roma organizations and with Roma people, especially because Judith Chauvet is our colleague, and she is very much involved in problems of Hétes Roma group. I think Gergely Arató was right saying that we don't really speak about Roma issues openly. What I miss basically is that funds, enormous amount of money that was allocated originally for Roma people, why this money is not reaching those organizations, associations that are really dealing with Roma people. And the reason for that is not that the current government probably does not really tackle that amount of money in a very fair way, because this was the case also with the previous government. So I don't really know why this money is not controlled. I also miss something else. The most important for Roma people would be education. I think education should be a priority for Roma people. I do know a number of Roma children who would like to learn, who would like to have a better position in society. They had a game asking Roma children what they would spend their money on if they had, and the answer in majority of cases was that they would spend the money not on a chocolate but on a bathroom. I think this concludes interventions from the audience.
In Germany, but whatever you would like to start with, feel free to comment on.
Yes, first let me explain why I became a social democrat. And that was that I come from a working class family in the countryside. And it was the Chancellor Willy Brandt and also Minister of Education in the region I come from, Ludwig von Friedeburg, who started a huge societal debate and a program to say that even the girl from a Catholic working class family, and that was the cumulation of all deficits you could have at that time, should have the opportunity to have a very good school education and also go to university. So in my generation, I have a lot of friends who are in the same situation, that we were the first ever to have a university degrees coming from working class families, and to really have support and the opportunity to go to university. And I think sometimes we are lacking a bit of a vision how we can empower people, and we need to do that, because nowadays the young generation has less possibilities for sort of a development than we had in my generation, and this should not be the case. And I think we have to invest here against more. With the health system in Germany, it depends also a little bit where you live and how the health infrastructure is developed. We have a majority that have a health insurance, and we also have some that have a private health insurance. With the general health insurance, for example, we have a system where also the trade unions are involved and part of the boards of these public health insurances. And also, if you have some waiting times in comparison, especially to get appointments at doctors or at certain specialized doctors, if you come from these these health insurances. But it's not that you have to wait months or something also for operations. But I said it depends a little bit on the region if you live and how the health infrastructure is there. But there is a big debate going on that the divide is increasing in Germany between people that have a private health insurance and the ones with the general, and that we have to close it. But at the same time, the risk if you are old and you are a member of a private health insurance is that you will pay at least in the end half of your pension or even more for your health insurance, because the amount you have to pay is increasing the older you get. And we have a lot of people that are trapped in this system of private health insurance. And once you have changed into a private, there's no way to return back to the other system, and that causes a lot of problems, and people that in the end who had good income in some years and decided and believed the promises of the private systems are really in a difficult situation. And this needs to be addressed. But I think we also have to see the demographic situation in Europe. And I think if we want to make sure that people participate in the labor market really until their pension age, we also have to invest more in the health and well-being of these people. And this is very essential, because we will not be able to address the issues on the labor market by just by people coming from third countries to Europe. And this means we also have to invest here in health. I mean, to the question on FERPA, and I know this very well because I was a member of the ETUC Executive Committee of the European Trade Unions for more than 10 years. We have a very complex but functioning system of coordination of social security. I talked about it. And already this is quite complex, because we are talking here of huge amounts of money of mobile citizens and mobile workers. I don't think we will have one health system. We have very different health systems in the member states, but we have to be better in guaranteeing entitlements and have a coordination between the national social security systems. My dream would be one day, for really mobile European citizens, we would have a European health insurance. This would strengthen the identity with Europe, and we would not have to have this really complex coordination of social security systems and entitlements. And I can tell you, a lot of people talk to me who worked in different member states, and in the end they try to get their pensions. That's a nightmare for many people, very complex, and we could do this much better here.
Thank you. 2 minutes each for the gentleman, and then we have to finish.
Okay.
I will switch to Hungarian. The question was asked in Hungarian. This is why I decided to speak in Hungarian. You have raised a very important political question. How is it possible that the poorest, the most vulnerable layer of stratum of the population votes on Orbán government? It has several explanations, but with a conservative family policy, anti-LGBTQ comments, the government, Orbán government, is capable to attract people who receive the least help from the government. And I think this is extremely important to pay attention to by Hungarian progressive forces, to speak about the collapsing healthcare system, about public transport, about education, and so forth. It could be listed further on. So I think these are those issues that should be discussed with those most vulnerable groups of the society, because they stick to Orbán's government. They continuously vote on them, despite that they have very low But the reaction of the Hungarian government would be, it is due to Brussels. No, it is not due to Brussels, but Brussels will have to do more than what has been done so far. We talked about healthcare system. We can talk about social rights and about housing or unemployment. It is simply impossible to maintain a two-geared Europe. It is not possible to have a rich Europe and a poor Europe because then the tensions will continuously increase and trust will be lost. So this is why, despite how difficult it is, the European minimum wage directive was very important, and there are several other initiatives that would also be very important to implement. So we do not only need a stronger Europe, but a more united, more uniform Europe as well. Speaking about the money that was not really spent on Roma population, on vulnerable groups, then if we want to answer this question, then it is not very difficult to give an answer to it, because, for example, railway network development in majority of cases is not implemented in areas where Roma population lives. At the same time, there are several programs when we had to find out that 90%, for example, of educational programs, training programs of Roma population was spent in the centers, and no penny was really distributed for or in the interest of Roma people. I think I also have to react on the railways issue. It is very important to understand that railways and public transport is not transportation issue only, but it is very important. It is very important also from a social point of view. So this is why a uniform European public transport policy should be very much supported by progressive forces. I would like to draw your attention also to your. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that speaking about housing, we needed to find the ways of communication with people having a very bad housing conditions. During election campaign in 2022, progressive forces made a huge mistake. They didn't know how to communicate with those groups of people. Now I would like to speak very much in brief. A Hungarian worker earns 1/4 of Western European worker doing the same job. What is the reason for that? I think it is just it is up to a decision of a government whether a government is willing to change such a situation or not. A country like Hungary today is in a position to set up priorities. It is very easy. It is as easy as that. Simply, we need to set different priorities, different from the current government. We spend billions on constructing new stadiums, billions on buying an airport and so on. So simply priorities have to be changed. There is a necessity of radical changes because whoever stays in the country is depressed. All those people living still in the country are more and more depressed. Roma, by the way, for Roma inclusion, knowledge, education is needed, and these are the public services that a normal society, government has to finance. This is we Social Democrats what we think about. So this is why there should be lots of initiatives. The problem with the EU decisions or decrees, the problem is that countries implement those decisions, those solutions. So the question is how to force member states really to implement what EU decides, because without forcing member states to do so, problems will remain. If we are not in a position to increase pensions up to 500 euros as a minimum, then what can we expect from a government like that? So if we want to have a welfare society, then we have to increase wages, we have to increase pensions, and have to provide public services. That is very important, and not to support continuously economy only. Since the COVID pandemic, billionaires doubled their wealth. So we are talking about empowerment, about inflating pensions and wages. At the same time, billionaires have increased their wealth, have doubled their wealth. So they also have to be involved, and we have to be brave enough to tax them at a higher rate. Those who have more should contribute with more. Thank you.
Nagyon köszönöm, akkor én is magyarul zárnám be a...
Thank you very much. So I will conclude this panel discussion in Hungarian as well. Thank you to all panelists for this very interesting and dynamic discussion. I am thankful also to the audience for their activity. We have talked about what the problems we have here in Hungary, but we also talked about European problems. There are measures, there are goals, but actually objectives are not really transposed. So we had been talking about what the solutions to these problems could be. Now we are going to have a 55-minute-long break that should be enough for lunch and networking. And then we will have a political discussion with Gergely Karácsony, Ágnes Vadai, Zita Gurmai, moderator will be Kata Iaksic. I also mentioned the publication of FEPS that is about European Union. Then there is another publication that can be downloaded from our website, how a vision can be introduced in practice. A German professor's publication is this publication that can be downloaded for free. And now I wish you bon appétit, and we will continue with the political discussion at 2 o'clock.